I know you just had a break, so I'm going to have you stand real quick before you get real comfortable again. And I'm just going to ask a few questions. And if the answer to this question for you is yes, then have a seat. Okay? We are all adults here, right? Non-judgmental zone, correct? Yes? Okay. How many of you have ever had any major surgeries that have required anesthesia? Have a seat. How many of you are business owners? Have a seat. How many of you have ever been a victim of any criminal offense? How many of you are married that are still standing? Okay, women that are standing, how many of you have children? Men standing, another very adult question, but I have to ask, how many of you have ever had a colonoscopy? Okay, I had one man stand. You all should see the look on the faces of everyone else that is standing. No, seriously, look at their faces. Okay, so you've just had your first 48 seconds of awkwardness. You can have a seat. "48 seconds. So it's been about 1,715 days since my life changed forever. It's been 245 weeks since I lost the very two most important persons in my life. It's been 56 months since I have had to deal with grieving the loss of my parents and 7 other very good family friends. And it's been 4 years, 8 months, and 12 days that you're looking at standing before you. Because 4 years, 8 months, and 12 days ago, a former part of my life died. And the very next day, I had to start living again. So you're looking at 48 months of life before you. So when you think about medicine, and the reason why I asked those of you that have had surgery is because each and every one of you that sat down had 48 of something that you went through. Whether it was 48 seconds, whether it was 48 minutes, whether it was 48 hours, 48 days, and 48 months, we have all gone through our first 48. And whether it's bearing a child, whether it's living life, whether it's having your surgery and now you're on the road to recovery, whether you have been a victim of a criminal offense and now they're trying to investigate in the first 48, you've been through your first 48. Has it always been peachy? Has it always been bad? So there's been ups and downs in that first 48, yes? So when you think about someone, and I work in the medical field as a social worker, and one of the things that we try to ensure of any of our patients who become unconscious, you want to make sure that you find that out right away because you do not want them to be without oxygen for too long. Now, you can be without oxygen for a long time. We can give you some of that and revive you, but then what's going to happen? What's going to be the after effect of that? You may, when you are without oxygen for so many seconds for too long, then you're looking at severe brain damage. And so, yes, you may have some kind of life after that, but what's going to be the quality of that life? And then there's 48 minutes after that I had to experience after the unexpected death of my parents. It was the first 48 minutes, the worst 48 minutes of my entire life. To the point where I don't even remember what went through my mind, I just know how I felt. And it was horrible. Then those who have gone through surgery, Surgeries can go fine. That's perfectly fine. Once they put you in the recovery room, that's when the real test is. You have 40, they're looking at 48 hours for recovery. And in that 48 hours, once you can make it out of that 48 hours, okay, with stable vital signs and alive, then they're looking at a good road to recovery. But if it's critical, if they can't stabilize your blood pressure, if they can't stabilize your oxygen levels in that 48 hours after surgery, then they're gonna put you back in ICU, and things become real hairy. And then there are some of us, again, who are victims of criminal offense. The first 48 hours of any investigation are very critical, because they're looking for two things. There are a few things. They're looking for lead, suspect, and they're trying to make an arrest in those first 48. And if they don't, the chances of that now become slim. Then there are those first 48 days of the year that we all have, because day one, we would have generated a New Year's resolution. What does your New Year's resolution look like 48 days later? Non-existent. Maybe the first 2, 3, 4, 5 days you did it, and now the other 40 days are nothing. But nonetheless, we have these first 48. And then there are those first 48 months of your marriage, for those that are married. How does that look? Oh, my married people are quiet. Then there are first 48 months of business. And that was one of my experiences, when my parents lost, and then my brother and I inherited the legacy and the already established businesses, and then we went to establish the foundation, and then I went to establish my personal business brand. And so there was all these things that we were doing in that first 48, in the last 4 years. And some we have failed, some we have succeeded, but it's been up and down in these first 48. And it's, in one of the statistics call it in business being the survival years of your business. And in that first 48 years of business, you may not be making any money. Are you going to be okay with that? Well, so in my first 48, and I'm just going to leave it at first 48, and I want you to add, as you think about for the next, where are we at? For the next 7 minutes, whatever your first 48 is, apply these to the rest of your life. Because the first 48, whether it's second, months, weeks, years, days, you would have learned something, you would have gone through something that should have changed your life forever. And then there are some of us that are 49 and older. How many of those are here? So I can't speak about the first 40 years of life, but they can, because I'm still 30, so I'm not there yet. But we can learn from these who have already experienced their first 48 years of life. So my first 48 started after the tragic death of my parents. I've started a grieving process that I've been dealing with for the last 48 months, acquiring an established business and ownership of one, starting a new business, and then what leadership look like when your backbones are no longer there. So there are 6 things that I learned in my experience for my first 48. One being, my parents taught me a lot. How many of you have been under the tutelage of Dr. Miles Munroe? So you consider yourself to be knowledgeable in a lot of things, correct? Okay, so he taught me a lot of lessons. When I started working with him a few years ago, then I realized I knew very little about business. And so if I was going to be sitting around any round tables, I'm like, look, I'm a social worker, but I'm not a business person. So I needed to carry my tail back to school, get some business under my belt. So that's when I got my MBA. So when I now sit, not only do I listen, but I can actually offer sound input. And so I did that. But now, they're no longer here. This tragedy happened. I'm left kind of on my own, and I'm like, what do I do? So there's all this information that I have, there's all this knowledge that I have, which is just really theory. But then I realized I know absolutely nothing. So I knew nothing. When it came to establishing the foundation, what? Non-what? E0331, what? What are these? So I had to learn, but I knew nothing. And yet my dad taught me everything. I'm like, I'm prepared for this. Miles Munroe was my best teacher. I went to school. I have 2 degrees. I could do this. But then I'm realizing, what? I knew absolutely nothing. And so now it was theory versus practical. So now I'm learning on the job. I'm applying all of my theoretical knowledge practically, and that looks very different than it does in the books. You agree? So as a social worker, it's interesting that, we go through all of these classes during college, and then I get in my office on a day-to-day dealing with a patient, and I try to remember what I learned in my school books, and then I realize if I do the exact same thing with this patient in the 21st century, he's going to punch me in the face. So I can't do that. And so it's more than just being book smart. So now I'm in these last 48 months having to apply the theory to practical. I'm like, man, this thing doesn't work the way you think it does. And so I realized that it really doesn't start to make sense until you can say, I've been there. I've done that. I've experienced that. The other thing I learned, number 2, was simple is more. So when my parents passed, someone talked earlier today about success being opportunity. We had this opportunity, this window of things and establishments that my brother and I could have done in the time that my parents passed, because there was this buzz going on. There was this buzz that people say, you need to do it now because Dr. Munroe was in their air and Dr. Munroe was in their head, so you want to start writing this book, and you want to open this foundation, and you want to start this business, and you want to do this movie, and so we're getting all these ideas. We're coming up with ideas, and so we're establishing all of these at the same time. No problem, we did that. If I am to be as candid, only 1 or 2 of that entire thing, of those entire list of things I just mentioned, are, to our standard, successful as we would like it to be, because we started too much. So simple is more. So I learned to just take 1 thing, maybe 2 things, and focus on that. And let that succeed, let that be at a maintenance stage, and then pick up the next idea. It also means I need to keep people out of my head as well. Because then we had ideas, but then I could remember people telling me, man, you only got a small window. If you don't do it in this small window, then you won't get that attention from people. And so now we're rushing to get things out because this window of success is going to be gone. But that's not true. It's been 48 months later, and I still hear people talking about Miles Munroe. Three, and my dad said this all the time, and he always compared it to that of an eagle. Leadership is lonely, and it really is. I learned in these last 48 months who my supporters really are, who my friends really are. I also learned who my haters are. And then there are people that, again, when we started all the little things that we started, they were succeeding, but they were quick, and they were temporary. And so people were there. Money was coming, fortune was coming, a little fame was coming, they could be there. So as time goes on and that starts to dwindle, well, so does everybody else. No problem. Leadership is lonely, but that loneliness I find that to be a good thing. Because I would rather take 1 person that's really with me, I don't care how long they've been with me, but that's with me genuinely, than a whole army of people that are actually just behind me ready to stab me in the back. Personal development, number 4. So again, and I can probably talk to all of my entrepreneurs or those that start a new business. When you start something, it becomes your everything, right? It becomes your baby. Like you put all of your effort, you put all of your energy, all you have into establishing that and growing that. Yes? So you start to have lack in other areas. So yes, your 17-year marriage, where you spent every day with your husband or your wife, you're no longer doing that because you're now putting that in your business. Now you're gaining a few pounds or losing some weight because you're not taking care of yourself, but you're putting all of your energy and your your effort into your business. So I had to learn that I couldn't, because what was starting to happen is there was a foundation going on, there was Charisa Munroe LLC going on, there was Munroe Global, there was just all these things. There was this book I was trying to write going on, and I wasn't able to focus on personal development for me. And that can be whatever you want it to be. So for me, a lot of my personal development is making sure that my physical health is up to par. Because I can't do what I do if I'm not well. I can't do what I do if I'm not able to move quick, fast. I can't do what I do if I'm not healthy. Again, I can't do what I do if my image doesn't look good. So I gotta make sure my hair is done, nails and your physical development may be different from you. And then because I go back to number one, when I realize I know nothing, then I can't do what I do if I'm not reading. I can't do what I do if I'm not asking questions. I can't do what I do if I'm not linking myself and networking to people who are already where I'm trying to be. That's personal development. Sometimes we lack in that area when we're just trying to run after the paper. Number 5, cash is your best friend. It has taken me 4 years, 8 months, and 12 days to figure that out. And that calculation I just gave is up until today. Because without cash, you can't do anything. And we heard it up here already. So I'm singing to the choir. But cash is going to be your best friend. Because when you look at cash has a few meanings. So for some, it's survival. For some, it's innovation. And then it's also going to be the future of whatever it is you want to do. Whether that's a business, and usually we're talking business here, or whether you just want to be wealthy instead of just rich, because there's a difference. There is a difference. So, yes, people say all the time, and when I say in the first 3, 4, 5 years of your business, you will not make money, you will not make money. And if you do, it's going to be very, very, very slow. I learned that with the foundation. I'm also learning that with my personal brand. And I've also heard a lot of other people say in the first year to 2 to 3 years of their business, they made money, they did not make money. And then when you do, that money should not come to you. Cain gave a very good wisdom on what to do if you're making $100,000. You bank it, you invest it. For those of us that are following the Christian faith, you want to make sure that you tithe so that it's always a window of an inflow. So again, my money, when I get it now, because there was a point in my life, let me tell you, how many females I have here? All my shoppers. There's some men too. My brother, you can raise your hand right about now. We love shopping, yes? I can find deals, but nonetheless, shopping is everything. So I used to shop up until about, 2014, when my parents passed away. I used to shop until I wanted to. Why? Because I looked at money a certain way. Because it was there. I wasn't making it, and it wasn't mine. Now there's money that I'm making, and now there's money that's mine. So I can't just be frivolous about it. So now I look at it differently. Now my money has a different set of meaning. So now my money does look like survival. Now it does look like I need it to be innovative. And then if you want there to be a successful future for which you're putting it in, you need to have it for that. So cash is going to be your best friend, especially depending on what it means to you. And the last thing that I learned in these 48 months is being humble. It has actually humbled me. And it's humbled me in so many areas. One being, there's a level of patience that you have to have when you're having a child. There's a level of patience that you have to have after surgery. You can't rush the recovery process. There's a level of patience that you have to have when you're starting a business. You're not going to make money right away. You're not going to have those employees right away. So right now, for my personal brand, I'm my everything. If you get it, well, I don't want to give out my secret, but I'm my everything. I'm my secretary, I'm my accountant, I'm my promoter, I'm my publicist. If you call on the phone, you can get a different voice, but I promise you it's me. But you have to do what you have to do to get where you need to go. And sometimes you have to start with nothing. I don't have the money to, right now, afford those different things. So I've had to humble myself and say, okay, you can't afford it. No one has to know. Just do what you have to do until you get where you need to get. That's my little secret. Don't tell nobody. Don't call my phone and ask for Munroe LLC. You won't get it. But again, I've had to become really, really humble. I've also had to allow myself to allow people to assist me. One of my, and my aunt would say this, one of my downfalls is I like things done right then, right now. And if I'm not going to get it right then, right now by somebody else, then I'm just going to do it. And sometimes that's not always wise. And so I've had to allow myself to be okay with allowing someone to help me, and then also allow them to help me at their pace. So we go back to that level of patience. And so, here I am, 48 months in, and I'm actually able to stand here because I've actually made it through those 48 months. So that means I've survived my first 48. And there's two brutal truths. One, don't be afraid to fail. People don't like failure. They talk about it being the worst negative thing that you can go through, but I've actually found it to be the best. We have not been successful in some of the businesses that we are doing, in some of our goals. We have failed at some of our goals, some of our timelines, but I found out that that's okay. Because now you've learned what needs to be done, you've learned what needs to be corrected, you've learned what you need and what you don't need. For the foundation, we've been able to now weed out the unnecessary people that we don't need. So now we have a strong following. Now we have a strong board. Now we can go forward. It took us 48 months to get there, but it doesn't matter how long it took me to get there. I had to pay a price. There's a price that had to be paid for me to obtain what I want. On the flip side, believe it or not, there's still a whole bunch of people that are afraid to succeed. So everybody wants to be successful, but people are actually afraid of that because with success now comes a level of accountability, and there now comes a level of expectation. And they're afraid of, man, what are people going to expect of me? What are people going to expect now that I have all this success and I finally made it here? They're going to expect me to keep doing better. So they're going to be raising your bar for you a lot higher and a lot quicker than you're ready for it. Are you prepared for that? And so again, I've had these 48 months. I've gone through some ups. I've gone through some downs. I've failed. I've lost. I've gained. I've succeeded. I've had my reps. I'm a big fitness guru, so when I think about the gym, when you go to the gym and you lift weights, you do reps. You do 3 sets of 12. By the time you get to the third set of that 12, you're a lot stronger than you were when you first started set 1. That's because you've gone through the reps. You have to go through the reps. And then the reps is what actually cuts, and the reps is what actually tear. So when you heal, that muscle now becomes stronger, but you got to go through the reps. So in these 48, in your first 48 of whatever, you have to go through the reps. Those reps aren't going to feel good. They're going to be tiring. They're going to hurt. They're going to pain. You're going to feel sore, but you got to go through those reps. So now that you've gone through the reps, you've gotten out all the excitement. Because how many of you get really, really, really excited when you start something? And you get really, really anxious. And it's like, I'm starting this, and I'm ready. And then you realize in that first 48 months, in that first 48 weeks, I was excited, but I'm not excited anymore because now I realize I got to work. So you've gone through the reps, you've failed, you've lost, you've gotten rid of whatever dead weight is needed. Now the work can begin. Now your real work can begin. And then there is also this fear of the unknown. Fear can be very paralyzing. But I just want you to recognize it. For me to stand here and tell you don't be afraid, it's like me talking to a wall, because we've all been there. just recognize it. Recognize that you may have a fear. Recognize that you may be afraid of not knowing what you don't know. And then just kind of manage that and then do something with that. But don't allow that to stop you. So now that we've gone through the reps, because we've all gone through 48 of something, 48 seconds of something, 48 months of something. We've had our first group who went through their 48 seconds, their first 48 seconds of awkwardness. I promise you, if we did that again, they will not be awkward. But I've had to go through. So now I can say, you can say, I've been there. I've done that. I've paid a price. Now I can begin. Yes? Thank you.